Okay, we are recording. Matt, the floor is yours.
All right, so I guess I'll just start off with an intro. This is Matt Baranowski, and I actually just completed my OSCP probably about 5 weeks ago, after about 5 months of some fairly intense training, about 40 hours a week in the PWK labs. And we should also have Thaddeus here, who's still in the labs right now. Thaddeus, sorry, he might be still getting his drink.
No, I'm here. I just wasn't sure if that was my cue or not. I'm Thaddeus Bender. I've been in the labs for 4 months now, just over 4 months. I've attempted the test twice. I got really close on both times. The second time, I mistakenly scheduled it during my finals week, which was a horrible decision, and I think I've got it on the third time, but that's me.
Yeah, I think you should too. Do that buffer overflow first.
Yeah.
And then we also have Quinn, who is our professor and basically mentor through this. It helped quite a bit. Want to give a quick introduction, Quinn?
Sure. My name is Quinn Kuzmich. I'm an adjunct professor over at CTU. I teach ethical hacking, vulnerability assessment, and management classes. Used to teach forensics, decided I was tired of that. My day job is I'm the enterprise security architect for Riverbed, small little Silicon Valley company some of you may or may not have heard of. I come from a background of very wide network engineering, desktop support, server administration, network engineering, telecommunications. I've done quite a bit. So, yeah, my goal here tonight is to help facilitate this meeting to help you guys get a better idea of what's going on with the OSCP, what it takes to prep for it, what it's like to go to it, and what it's like to complete it, and you know, what to look forward to afterwards for what kind of a career you can build. So any questions you have along those lines, ask. One of us can definitely help you out. Matt, back to you.
I guess we should probably open up to questions right now. That's the main focus of this. Just let everybody air their questions, anything related, I guess. Whoever wants to start.
Bye, Ron.
He'll be back when he's hungry. I guess if nobody has any questions forthcoming, Matt, why don't you start by telling everybody what skills you had before you started the PWK labs, what you learned while you were doing it, and you know, what kind of resources you utilized. Let's start with the basics, you know, because everybody, I mean, if they haven't started, one of the common things that people complain about is, well, I just don't know enough, or I don't know where to start studying, or blah blah blah, et cetera. So let's walk through what your story was. Let's give everybody else an idea of what that was like for you.
All right. Now, the majority of my background has been in like desk side support with some systems administration and a little bit of network operation. Probably just about a year on that. And going into it, I really didn't know a whole lot that was directly applicable from a technical standpoint. The months leading up to it, I got a little more familiar with Linux. It was a skill I used to have, just let it basically deteriorate, unfortunately. And yeah, I had my CCNA at 18, so that actually helped. That was a long time ago. And yeah, just did some practice on like some Vuln Hub servers before I went in, and brushed up a little bit on, like I said, Linux and like shell scripting. So I probably went into it with a lot less knowledge and skills than a lot of people that have gone into it. And as far as where you were asking what like resources I was using, what I learned during the PWK, is that correct, Quinn?
Yeah. What did you use? I mean, there's the stuff I fed to you, but why don't you walk through everything here so everybody knows?
All right. The majority of what I learned in there is going to be like web application. I'd say there's some like other like general network application attacks, a lot of buffer overflow stuff, like attacking vulnerable services such as FTP, doing all sorts of different password attacks. Didn't necessarily have to do any like cracking, but it did help in certain situations. It did actually come up on the exam. But the thing is with like cracking passwords and PWK, if you're meant to do it, it's going to be something you'll be able to crack on just using your CPU within 20 minutes with like the Rocky.txt word list, which comes with Kali.
Right.
But yeah, as far as web apps, there's a huge focus on that, like from file inclusions to like just straight up direct command, like remote command execution, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, like weak credentials, file upload. There's some web dev stuff, which I know is a little old, but some systems with that actually were configured for like HTTP put. You can just upload your own like malicious code and run it from there.
Right.
Buffer overflow was a pretty big one. I know that was kind of intimidating to me going in. I struggled with it initially, but once you do a couple of them, the very basic ones are pretty easy. As far as resources, obviously the materials that came with the lab, pretty helpful as just as a starting point. It's not going to cover everything. It's going to get you going in the right direction. A lot of searching Google. That's going to be a lot of your time in the lab. You're going to probably find yourself reading a lot of security blogs, sometimes some applicable walkthroughs, a lot of stuff on Stack Overflow.
Yeah, it's something, if you don't mind me jumping in real quick, I tell people this, and it was as true for me years ago when I started my journey as it is today for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
To pass OSCP, I did not have to sell my soul to the devil for some arcane knowledge that nobody else possessed. Greater than 80, 90% of what I know in the security field can be found on Google. What separates the people who succeed from the people who give up or the people who never try is that you actually put in the time and effort to comprehend what it is that you're reading, and you don't just copy and paste random code or something from what somebody else said. You try and actually understand what it is that you're doing. All this information is out there. There's very little that you actually have to buy a book for and you can't find for free somewhere. I promise you, odds are pretty good that unless you're doing some really high-end, super elite penetration testing, somebody has already tried to do what you're trying to do and they documented it. Your Google foo is a skill that must be improved.
Mine still needs a great deal of improvement too. I know that. And they change things specifically to try to mimic the real life setting. A lot of the exploits you'll find in public aren't going to work out of the bat, and it's going to take some researching and understanding the target environment to be able to modify them and get them to work.
Eddie, so you're going to say something?
No, I was just saying that I guess that's the point of the portion of the test that is the most intimidating for me is the cross-compiling, the shellcode aspect of it, the binary exploit side, the web application exploit, file inclusions, cross-site scripting, SQL injection. That's pretty. Most of my skills are on on that side instead of the binary exploit side. Do you have any? I mean, does the material cover it well enough for you to grasp it, or are there other resources we need to take a look at?
Yeah, you'll definitely be looking at some other resources. Oh, sorry, Thaddeus, go ahead.
I would say that the resources will cover about 80% of what you need to crack. What you need to crack about 80% of the machines. There's those golden ticket machines like Tame, Sufferance. that sort of thing, that will that are really just trolly, and to someone that has experience in what you're dealing with those machines, it might, there's people in the forums that say, I got them in 5 minutes. There's other people that it takes weeks. But I feel like, at least with the machines that I've gotten, which I think I'm at mid-30s, most of which I've gotten from lab materials, at least the basics. And then from there, like Matt and Quinn said, it's just Google and understanding what it's doing and understanding a little bit of languaging. You don't have to be able to code from scratch with Python or Perl or Ruby or whatever, but as long as you can read it and understand what it's trying to do and critique it, that's usually the best thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and another thing that you need to remember is you're not alone in this. I mean, granted, yes, when you actually start working on some of this stuff, you're better off from a learning perspective tackling it by yourself. But don't be afraid to actually say, you know what, I'm stuck. Ask for help. And anybody who's been through OSCP, they're not going to give you the answer. They'll point you in the right direction, and then you'll learn for yourself what the question is that needs to be answered. Right. So, I mean, if this stuff intimidates you, hey, welcome to the party. Believe me, we've all been there. I've got OSCP, OSWP, OSCE, and I want to go for the other two that they've got. I just haven't been able to get signed up for the classes in Vegas. But I promise you, stuff intimidates me on a near daily basis. The difference is you don't let it stop you from trying. So, yeah, you're not alone, man. If you have questions, ask. People here will help you. Thaddeus has a Discord server, DC719. There's some fantastic people on there that can help you out. Believe me, you're not alone.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
About half the people on the Discord have come from either DC719 or the forums. Of me reaching out and PMing somebody and saying, hey, I'm stuck here, X, Y, Z is what I've already done. What should I be asking myself? And it really comes down to what you do ask. If you just go on the forums and say, what do I do? A lot of people won't even answer you or say, try harder. But if you PM someone, or if you actually say, this is kind of what I've done without spoilers, what should I be asking myself to go further? 9 times out of 10, you'll get somebody that says, hey, man, I was there too. Like, maybe you should look at this. Maybe you should think about that, and get you over that hump that you're stuck on.
Bouncing ideas off people, even just on like Discord or whatever, is a huge help sometimes, just to get like a different perspective.
Right. Yeah,
or even just use a sounding board.
Yeah.
There's been times where I'm talking to Matt and I'm like, dude, I've done this, and this, and as soon as I press enter, and I'm like, don't say anything, like I just figured it out as I said it. So just having that, even my wife has been subject to that also. She has no idea about computers, but just being able to say that to her of the processes has helped me. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, really, the biggest thing is that helps people out in this. They don't have to be masters of everything and the super smartest people, but the single thing I found that helps people the most is really understanding the basics of the technologies that you're playing with. Like Thaddeus said earlier, you don't have to be an enterprise application developer, but being able to read the code, that's something I preach to all my students. Read the code, okay? If you can't read it, you don't understand it. If you don't understand it, you can't use the system against itself. That's where you got to start. Start understanding how the programming language functions and how to parse it in your head so that it makes sense. Okay? If you don't have to know everything about it, but you got to be able to parse it out.
Right.
I mean, just for full disclosure, when I went into OSCP myself, I've been in IT for 15, 17, 18 years, something like that. I can't remember. It was a while ago. And like I said, my background was in desktop support and Windows. I knew a fair bit about networking, telecommunications, and Windows, and that was it. I had programmed with Visual Basic back in the mid-90s. I think I took a Turbo Pascal class back in 92, 93. I'm not a programmer. I had barely touched Linux ever. I knew less about Linux than Matt did going into it, honestly, like from a practical standpoint. But I learned very quickly on the fly. I mean, seriously, learning on the fly is something that you will have to be able to do. You don't have to know everything. You have to be capable of learning. And don't be afraid of buying lab extensions if you have to. I mean, that definitely helps people out. Yeah, I mean, it helps. If you don't know Linux to the degree that you think you do, best resource I can recommend is Bandit. Bandit. The URL, labs, or overthewire.org. Go there and play the Bandit war game. It seems cheesy, it seems stupid, but it does start very simple and works its way up to using Linux as a penetration tester would. If you haven't gone through all the levels, do it. Don't look up walkthroughs, don't try to cheat. Force yourself to figure out how to get past each level.
Yeah, it teaches Linux and some lateral thinking.
Yep.
Hey guys, how much similarity is there between the labs and the actual exam?
Very, very much. I would say I went into my first exam, and I've done 2 now, looking at my 3rd, hopefully going to pass it this next time. But I would say that I went into the first one really not expecting much. I was like, I just want to see what it is. And that's something, going back to what Quinn said, buying lab extensions. There's no reason to buy a lab extension if you haven't taken a test, in my opinion, because every time you buy a lab extension, you're getting a free certificate or test certificate. So don't be afraid of that if you're going to buy a lab extension. And then with that first one, I was really surprised. I kind of went in there saying, like, you know, maybe I'll get the buffer overflow and I'll maybe get 1 or 2 more. And I ended up leaving that with, I think, 55 points, and I was really close to getting the 65 that I needed with the lab report. And that was the same thing on the second. Don't think that you have to be able to walk through every single machine in the labs in 5 minutes before you go and take the test. And don't be afraid. If you're going to buy a lab extension, you're going to get a free test anyway, so don't be afraid to take that dive and try it once.
Yeah, you can't be afraid of failing. You got to just push through it and try it. The test is very similar in terms of mindset to the lab machines you're going to find. If you can tackle ghost, pain, sufferance, humble, and there's another one, I can't remember what it was, but if you can tackle those, what I call the crown jewels of the lab, and you can do them reasonably quickly, and you understand everything about exploiting them, you're at least ready for the test. I mean, there are people that have taken, who broke way more machines in the lab than I did and still can't pass the test. But they never bothered to break into those particular machines. So, you know, quality over quantity, so to speak.
Alpha is another one that probably add to that list, because that was an actual exam machine
Alpha.
put in the labs.
Yep, Alpha, that was the one.
There's a guy in our Discord that cracked every single machine in the labs, and he only scored a 60. But because of his lab report and his exercises, he got the 70 for the passing grade. So.
Yep. So that was going to be another question that I was thinking of here. Do you recommend going ahead and doing the full labs, turning that in?
Yeah.
That's entirely. Now hold on, let me jump on this one. That is entirely up to you on what your strategy to pass is. The question, okay, so Thaddeus and I and Matt and I, we all have different strategies on how to pass. For Thaddeus and Matt, it would, that's the way they wanted it to get those extra points. They did a full report on it and they turned that in for those extra points. For me personally, this is my personality. I'm not advocating this as a strategy for anybody else. This is just my personality. I wanted to pass that test on my own merit and not based off of extra credit points. Either I pass or I don't. And I passed on my first attempt. Everybody is different. Think about how you want to tackle it, what kind of a career you've built, how do you approach problems in the professional workplace, and then adopt your strategy for that. If you think it'll work for you and that's acceptable, by all means, do it.
Right. To add on top of that, I'd recommend doing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I just want the CPE.
Yeah, if that's the case, then yeah, by all means do it. There is nothing wrong with that strategy. Just make sure it's a decision that fits with what you want. And if your goal is just to get the certification, do it.
And there's a hybrid to that too. With I would say that's a good practice to do it just to get the practice of writing a professional lab report or penetration.
That's what I was going to add. And the exercises from the labs too. Sorry.
No, yeah. To show, hey, this is what I did. Just to write that stuff out, I think that's good practice. That way, you're coming off a 24-hour penetration test into a 24-hour period to write up your final report. I don't think that I would want to be seeing that report for the first time right after that penetration test. So, like Quinn said, it's up to you whether or not you turn it in, but I would suggest at least doing it for the sake of understanding what you're putting in, why you're putting it in, and how it's supposed to be formatted.
Right on.
And take a ton of notes and screenshots. Even if you think they're not relevant, they may be later.
Yeah.
Yeah, believe me, and back everything up. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
You have multiple backups in disparate locations and devices because, if something happens to Evernote or you lose your screenshots, bam, you're screwed. So make sure you back it all up.
Just a real-life application for that. On my second exam, I decided to take a nap during the middle of the night, and I fell asleep for 4 hours. I woke up, and my Windows 10 decided to restart and do updates, and so I lost a good portion of my notes and obviously all the scans I had started before I went to bed. So things to think about.
Yeah, thanks, Windows 10.
Thanks, Microsoft.
Thanks, Obama.
So the nap is actually what helped me the most on the test. Like if you feel like you're getting overwhelmed and too tired, it's fine to take a couple-hour nap. When I did that after about 13 hours.
Yeah, what was the strategy we were talking about? Work for 12 hours, sleep for X number of hours, and that leaves you with whatever Y hours remain after your nap. Like work for 12, sleep for 6, work for 6, and adjust as necessary for how tired you are.
Like 4 hours or so I put in after my nap, I got 35 points, which is half of what you need to pass.
Yep.
One, and also don't wait until the evening to start your exam. Start it as early as possible to your normal schedule. That way you're waking up, you're groggy, you start all your NMAP scans and whatever enumeration scans you're doing, and then by the time you're up and awake, that's when you're tackling those really hard, how do I critique this payload or this exploit to work for this machine type deal versus...
Yeah, I credit a lot of my success on the exam from starting my exam at 9 o'clock in the morning and treating it like it was my day job. And I just pulled an all-nighter for, I was done after, it took me 11 and a half hours. But, treating it like it was a job did me a lot of good.
Which is useful life habits. So the one thing I would say from my experience, I guess my background before I took this was I took my A+ cert last year, and I passed that through Wounded Warrior program. I didn't even see a VM until probably about 2 years ago. I'd never even used a VM. And it was just a matter of determination, I think is the best way to put it, and scheduling. I believe that I did as well as I did because currently I'm about to graduate college. I don't have a job. I'm getting ready for an internship across country, so I'm not going to get a job. So my contract that I had in another company ended in September, and since then it's just been 100% learning and training. So I was putting in an average of like 8 to 10 hours a day, just like it was my job to do the OSCP. But that's also coming from a very, very newbie type of position in the IT, let alone security field.
Yeah, you came in with even a lot less experience and knowledge than I did. And you did.
I didn't.
Oh, you did better.
I didn't know what an NMAP scan was. I didn't know what any scans were. Never heard of a buffer overflow. luckily I did some Google Fooling and found the course materials online, or rather I didn't find the course materials online, and so I was not able to look ahead and do a little bit of prep. But really, in the end, even if I would have found those materials, it wouldn't have really helped, because a lot of it you have to have the right setup, and they give you a lot of things to work through as far as software and everything. And so the software, the documentation is only as good as the access to the PWK courses.
Yep. So does anybody have any further questions? Anything we can help?
I guess not at this time. Obviously, for the reasons that you've mentioned before about the forums and Discord, is that once we get into it, I'm sure we're going to have plenty of questions. And I think you're right that asking for crumbs instead of a map is a much better approach, because those that have gotten the certification want to maintain the integrity of the cert. So.
Yeah, definitely. And asking, just not to like, I guess, steer you away from asking for help also, but one of the things that has almost hurt me as much as it's helped me is asking for help in certain cases, because there are multiple ways to use machines, and sometimes I'll be on a path that someone else didn't take, and I'll ask her for help, and they'll be like, no, you're wrong, no, you should be doing this, and it throws me for a tailspin. So just be prepared for that also. There's not just one way into each machine. So.
Okay, good to know.
Sometimes there's more than one way to escalate your privileges once you're in as a low privilege shell too.
Yeah, it's important to remember these machines, there's usually more than one way in. Not all of them, but I would say most of them, there is more than one way in. And once you break a machine, don't give up. I mean, come back to that machine after you do a couple of others. There's more than one way into a lot of these machines, and it's a great learning opportunity. That's why the labs for PWK are worth their weight in gold, is because it's an actual, practical, real-world environment. And there is actually another lab, a second lab, that once you've passed OSCP, you can get access to. I'm not sure on the procedure for how. I haven't bothered to research that, but there is an OSCP-only lab you can get access to that is supposedly much more difficult to get into. They have some information on the offensive security website about it. But yeah, it's good. There's good stuff out there. Plus, you know, once you have OSCP, it really does help your career quite a bit. And I don't mean the certificate itself does that. I mean having the knowledge, the experience, and the confidence from it. And not only that, the single most important thing I could say about OSCP for me wasn't getting the certification itself. It was the networking that I did with the people that I met on the forums and in IRC. One of them became my business partner on some startups that I have, one of my startups, and from that association, I have launched a couple of other startups as well, and they are actually doing quite well. And so, I mean, going for OSCP itself, not even getting it, but just trying and meeting people has had a major positive impact on my life. So, I mean, I can't say enough good things about this.
Yep. And then there's a
don't take my Quinn's class if you don't want to hear about the OSCP.
What was that?
I said don't take one of your classes if you don't want to hear about the OSCP.
Yeah, I mean, I preach it. I'm a big evangelist for it.
Yeah, Quinn pushed me into it. It's probably like 6 or 7 years ahead of my anticipated schedule.
Yeah.
I wasn't even planning on getting into InfoSec for like several years after I graduate. He convinced me to just go for it.
And I had never heard of it. I never thought about doing it. If it wasn't for, you know, not to kiss up too much, but if it wasn't for Quinn's prodding, I wouldn't have even done the capture the flag that I did, get the internship that I now am facing. So on that merit, I went ahead and did the OSCP, and I did it a lot. Probably, I would not recommend anyone doing it at the skill level that I was at. But unless they have the time and the dedication that I had, and I'd love to say that I passed it first time, but at the very least, I feel very successful that I was able to complete what I have completed so far, and that I'm as competent as I am coming out of something that I probably shouldn't have gone into at the level that I was at.
I mean, honestly, you bring up a great point. That the story of how you and I actually met's kind of funny. Thaddeus came into one of my classes because, I don't know, somebody told him about me and how I teach this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And Thaddeus comes into my classroom and he says, after class, he says, hey, or it was before class, and he says, hey, I'm going to DEF CON. I've never been to DEF CON. What should I do? And I just looked at him for a second and I said, do a CTF, because there's a bunch of them there. You can capture the flag. And he looks at me like, well, but I don't know anything. I can't do anything. Why would I do a CTF? But I was like, well, the point of a CTF when you're at your level is not to win. I mean, if you lose, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to make fun of you. They're going to take you out back and break your knees. I mean, what do you expect is going to happen? You're going to lose, but you're also going to learn. And this is how you learn, by failing over and over and over again. I'm sorry, if you are afraid of failing, you will never push yourself. That sounds stupid, but it's true. You've got to be willing to fail. That doesn't mean that you give up. It just means you haven't succeeded yet. And so, Thaddeus was like, okay, I guess I can do that. And he went to DEF CON, and it was pretty randomly, but he went over to the car hacking village, and they were running a CTF, and he was like, you know what, why not? Let's take a shot at it. And apparently he impressed one of the organizers of it sufficiently. I don't recall if you won it or not, but you placed much higher than you thought you would. And you had an impromptu job interview on the spot, and they offered you the internship. Now, you still had to go through the selection process for it, but the fact is you got attention for trying. You didn't even have to win. You just tried. And that's what got you there. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Thaddeus, but...
And that's why I always tell some of the guys that I mentor, and even my kids, is you need to differentiate the difference between the term unsuccessful and failure. The only failure is not trying. You can be unsuccessful all day long. You're learning. To not try is your failure. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good example of that. Tim Tebow. I love him or hate him. His religion, blah, blah, it's irrelevant. He's currently playing AAA ball for the Mets. And something he said a while ago struck me. He's like, I haven't failed until I've given up. And you got to admit, the guy is persistent and he keeps going. You haven't failed until you've given up.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing about the OSCP is there are nights. I've never been one to, in gaming or raging or whatever, on whatever you're doing to like damage keyboards or mouses or throw things, but the OSCP got me to that point a couple of times to where I was like, I had my keyboard in my hands, like ready to snatch it from them. There's one time where I was that way, and I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm gonna go lay down. I laid down and I was about halfway asleep, and it clicked how I was gonna hack the machine. I jumped out of bed, I went over, and it worked right away. Yeah, it scared the crap out of my wife in the process. So that's just part of OSCP is not only networking, but also it's okay to take a break, but never give up at the same time. So
it's also good to know when to move on to another machine or another task. Like
and
the time management aspect's a big skill to learn.
That's a big key, because some of the machines in the OSCP are not just find the key, go in the door, and you're there. It's find the key to this door. Then you got to figure out what the next door is, and then it's a process. It's 4, 5, 6 different exploits or different things like SQL injection and stuff like that. Just tying all these things together before you even get a low privilege shell. So some of those machines that are that long of a process, it's best to start at just the smaller machines and say, okay, this is SQL injection. Okay, I understand how to do that now. And this is local file inclusion. I know how to do that now. And then you can go onto that machine and understand how to do all of those things together.
And something else to think of is when you get past OSCP, if all you want to get is a certification and continue on your current career path, great. but it opens doors to working as an actual penetration tester, and it also gives you greater credibility in the information security community that you have this. And as an example of this, and I'm not jinxing this at all, but Matt, he's currently interviewing, and he's probably going to get a job as a remote junior penetration tester. This is a fantastic opportunity to take those skills and take them to the next level. And you need to understand, in this field, people who are technically competent and skilled are as rare as hen's teeth. Once you have the certification and maybe 2 to 3 years of experience in the field, there is really no reason for you to be making less than 6 figures for the rest of your career, because these skills are valuable. And the mindset and everything that comes with it, they pay dividends. If you feel like you're not making enough money, this is a fantastic way to increase your earning potential.
Very good to know.
And you're easy to go.
Yeah,
I got another.
Also fun. So I find this stuff to be a lot of fun, and that's pretty important too.
Oh yeah, it's a hoot.
If you're a puzzle person, this is it for you. It's just real life, trying to figure out how piece A fits into piece B. And the beauty of it is that each one's vulnerable. Going in real life, you might be attacking something or you're not sure. You have no idea whether it's vulnerable. At this point, with labs and everything, everything's vulnerable. You just have to figure out the puzzle pieces, which I think is really cool.
Yep. I've been off and on. I've been in the industry for a long, long time, and I've been pen testing for directly for probably 2.5 years, 3 years now, on a daily basis. And for me, it's all self-learned. So I've got holes here and there where I'll run into something. I'm like, okay, I know I can do something. I don't know what I could do, but dang it, I can Google it. I get really good, and then I can learn that. I learn that, and I figure out how to manipulate it and how to move forward, and then tuck it in the back of my head, and I remember it next time. So I think after a few days in the lab that I think I'll do well enough.
Oh yeah, probably. That's basically PWK is. It's all self-paced, self-learning. Sure, they give you some materials as a starting point, but like we were saying earlier, it's going to be a lot of self-learning.
Right.
And in the most generic sense, I would say that the 2 skills that you need to pass the OSCP are, can you enumerate and can you Google? And if you can do those 2 things, then you will probably have a really high success rate at the OSCP.
Okay, yeah.
I would add time management to that too.
Yeah.
You had me at the first 2. The last one was going to kill me.
Yeah,
That's what kills a lot of people. They get tunnel vision, and they chase something down that distracts them from what they really should be looking at. So
yeah.
My first attempt, I spent several hours trying to log into a web application that I didn't even need to log into because it was pointing to the next piece of the puzzle on the freaking homepage.
Right.
So there went like 4 hours.
Well, and that brings up a good point. How many red herrings do you have in the in the lab?
There's no shortage
a
of those.
lot. A lot.
There are machines that are specifically set up just to say, fuck you, OSCP. Like, fuck you so hard.
Yeah. Well, those are going to be my Achilles tendon, my weakness, I think.
But the beauty of those,
sorry.
The beauty of those is really, like, when you get done with them, it's such a painful process that when you're done, you're like, I will never make that mistake again. I understand that 100%.
And I know a few of those moments off the top of my head.
Guys, I'm just wondering, I don't know, and I guess this really comes to enumeration. How do you decide which one you're going to target and use Metasploit on? Because the way I understand in the test, that you can only use it on one machine. And does it matter?
That's correct. As far as like auxiliary, like post exploits and the exploits, obviously, basically anything but the handler. You're only allowed one use. And I never really figured out how to answer that question myself. Like I figured knowing them, it would be the 10-point machine, which would be the easiest. But I didn't even use it on that one.
Yeah, my exam, there was only one machine I could have used Metasploit on, and it was the 10-point machine. So,
see, there was a module for my 10-point machine, but it didn't work. And I actually found a public exploit. I showed you that. It was like 15 lines of code from start to finish, and that was it.
Right, I remember that, yeah.
Root privilege shell. But the way to find your way to that exploit was a lot trickier, though. That was the hard part. And that's where attention to detail comes in.
Yeah, in my two exams I've taken so far, the first exam was pretty much all Windows machines, 0 Metasploit module. The second exam, every single one of my machines had a Metasploit module or exploit available for it. Whether or not they worked or not, I don't know. And it's really a personal. It's one of those things that once you're in there, you have to make that choice. It's again weighing the point scale, because when you get in your exam, they give you the point scale. So you have a 25-pointer that's your overflow, a 25-pointer that's whatever, and then 2 20 to 10. So if you find something that's or Metasploitable right away, I would say either try and find a way not to do that, or wait till the end. Especially if it's a 10-point machine, wait until the end, and maybe you can get a 25-point machine with your Metasploit versus wasting it on that 10-pointer.
Also, sorry.
It also comes back to what it is. If it's just what type of exploit is it? A local file inclusion, a remote file inclusion, some sort of PHP injection. You know, a lot of those things might be difficult to figure out, but they're doable manually. So if something is like MS60 or 06- or 87 or whatever.
0667.
Yeah, you're not going to do that manually. So if you see that and it's workable, you can say, okay, I know this is going to work, or I'm going to save this for later and try this out. So.
Yeah, and your Metasploit machine might actually only end up being privilege escalation on one machine. So that's a possibility.
Yeah, that's something to keep in mind too. There's always 2 levels. There's a level to get into the machine, and then some of the machines, that's all there is. And then there's other machines where first you have to get in, then you have to figure out how to get root. So.
To save a little bit of time, I highly recommend scripting your enumeration to output files and everything, like a simple shell script or whatever. And while your enumeration is running, knock out the buffer overflow for 25 points. If you get decent at those, that should take good screenshots and everything an hour or less.
Right. Screen is a great utility for that. I use Screen religiously on Linux. I'll dump a persistent.
What is Screen?
It's
like TMUX.
Yeah, it's like TMUX. It's a multiplexer. It allows you to open a command shell and send it into the background, and then you can resume the session. It's really good for if you have an unstable connection. Go in, you fire up Screen, you start the command, and if your session drops, you can always reconnect and then reattach to that session.
Interesting.
Yeah, Screen's fantastic. I love it.
Screen and TMUX are awesome.
Yeah, if you can share your session too. So if both of you log into the same Linux box as the same user, you can both attach to the same session, type over the top of each other. It's really good for hand over hand if you're showing someone something.
Nice.
Interesting.
So a previous guy kind of just made me come up with a question. Is there occasions where you actually are compiling your own C code for exploits, or maybe building your own shell code?
Only on the buffer overflow, really. That's the only one that I've experienced it from scratch. Everything else is Metasploit module, some Python scripting, but it's just using the tools that are already built into Kali.
There will be exploits in the lab that you'll have to compile C code on, but you're going to be mostly correcting deliberate mistakes that whoever published the proof of concept put in there so the script kiddies can't use it. So, I mean, yeah, there will be compiling of exploits and stuff, but it's not like that's all you're going to do.
Right, or modifications to the code to match environmental constraints.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you'll run into that, but it won't be widespread.
So the buffer overflow machine in the exam, they'll give you a POC that's very similar to the one they go over in the lab materials. It's just enough to connect, do like TCP or whatever, send the bad buffer and crash, and then you go from there.
Yeah, you won't have to write your own shell code. That's beyond the scope of OSCP. That's when you start getting into OSCE territory.
You'll need to be very familiar with NSF-Venom and its options. So,
you'll be generating shell code, but you won't be writing it. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for the answer.
No problem.
Cool. So does anybody else have any questions?
No, I think this really helps with my confidence. I haven't gone into any of the labs, haven't even paid for it yet, but I've been hesitating to go in just because I think I get one shot at this by the company, and then I've got to pay for it after that. So I didn't want to waste it, but my confidence is a bit higher now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the thing to remember is that the big amount of money that needs to be invested in it comes up front. The exam retakes are $60 a piece. I mean, that's nothing. And if you need to get, more lab extension time, it's way cheaper to get an extension than the original investment that your company will have to make. So,
if you get a 90-day extension, I think it's $600.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the least efficient will be 30 days for $250, I think.
Yep.
And then they'll come with a voucher. So I'd suggest using your voucher before you extend. Otherwise, they won't give you like an extra voucher. But if you use it before you extend, they'll give you a voucher with the extension.
Okay.
Cool. Well, I hope that this has helped everybody out. We'll probably be doing another one of these again if people ask for it, but I've got this recording, so hopefully this helps other people. And if there are questions, DC719 or, talk to Thaddeus and get access to the Discord server. We're all in there. So, we do CTFs in there. We got channels for OSCP, OSCE, all kinds of different things, different topics people can talk about. So if you have questions, ask. That's what we're here for. It's not like we know everything, but, we're certainly happy to help if we can. Yeah, there's so much I don't know. Cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Well, was that Thaddeus?
Yeah, don't be afraid to hit me up on Facebook or in the DC719. I can get you into the Discord real quick. There's some prep stuff in there like the over-the-wire and a few other like free website tools like Dan's little website and that sort of stuff. And then you can talk to us one-on-one any time of the day and stuff. There's not just us. There's people from Europe, people from all over the U.S. So
I would like us to get something together, like a knowledge-based type system or something, just to pool all of our resources together. That's kind of like a down-the-road thing.
Yeah, and if you're just getting started in something like this, I've written a couple articles on how to get started in pen testing, and I published them to my LinkedIn profile. It's just those articles. So if you look me up on LinkedIn and read those articles, it just lays out step-by-step, here are the basics, here are the things that you can do, here are the free resources, here are a couple of pay-for resources if you've got a couple extra bucks. But when I prepped for OSCP, I didn't pay for any material. I used nothing but the free stuff I could find on the internet, and I worked my butt off. When I was doing OSCP, I was putting in 6 to 8 hours a night with a full-time job and a family, and 20-plus hours on the weekends. So your success is directly correlated to the amount of time and effort that you put into it.
All right. Well, I'm freezing my balls off, so I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for everyone who stopped by. Appreciate it.
No problem. Take care, Thaddeus.
Yeah.